Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar, Baumgardner, Cook, Coram, Court,
Absent.
Crowder, Donovan, Finberg, Fields, Garcia, Gardner, Guzman, Hill, Holbert, John, Jones, Kagan, Kafalis, Kerr, Lambert, Lumberg, Marble, Martinez-Humanic, Merrifield, Moreno, Neville, Priola, Scott, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Tate, Todd, Williams, Zinzinger, Court. Mr. President.
Here. The 35 present, 0 absent, 0 excused. We have a quorum. Senator Coram.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members and guests, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the journal. Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the journal of Monday, March the 26th be dispensed with and that the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion is adopted. Committee reports.
March 26, 2018, the Committee on Business, Labor, Technology has had in consideration and had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends appointments to be placed on the consent calendar. Confirm member of the Board of Assessment Appeals for a term expiring July 1st, 2018. Amy J. Williams, MAI of Hayden, Colorado, member engaged in agriculture, reappointed for a term expiring July 1st, 2019. Sharice Chestnut of Thornton, Colorado, on occasion of the resignation for James R. Muir of Golden, Colorado, appointed. March 26, 2018, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee articles following, House Bill 1240 be referred favorably to Committee on Finance. March 26, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee articles following, House Bill 1154 be referred to Committee to hold the favorable recommendation.
Senate Services.
Correctly printed, Senate Bill 217, 218, 219, 220, 221, and 222. Senate Joint Resolution 9 correctly engrossed. Senate Bill 178 and 200 correctly revised. House Bill 1047, 1145, 1227 correctly enrolled. Senate Bill 107.
Third reading of bills. Consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the titles to all the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar?
Senate Bill 178 by Senator Smallwood and Representative Crathorpe concerning the definition of similar coverage for workers' compensation for certain operators of commercial vehicles. House Bill 1227 by Representatives Harrod and Wist and Senator Cook concerning the authority of the Real Estate Commission to issue licenses for an initial period of less than 3 years. House Bill 1047 by Representative Valentine and Senator Gardner concerning technical modifications to the Fair Campaign Practices Act to facilitate its administration. House Bill 1145 by Representative Hooten and Senator Moreno concerning the repeal of laws regulating ballot issue petition circulators that have been permanently enjoined from enforcement.
Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the following bills on third reading and final passage consent calendar consisting of Senate Bill 178, House Bill 1227, House Bill 1047, and House Bill 1145.
Is there any discussion on any of the bills? The motion is for the adoption of all the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes on any of the bills? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 178 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Crowder, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Martinez-Humenek, Senator Neville, Senator Coram, Senator Lundberg, Senator Priola, Senator Tate, Senator Marble, Senator John, Senator Williams, Senator Kafalas, Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Scott, Senator Lambert. Please add the President. With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1227 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Gardner. With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1047 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Moreno, Senator Martinez-Humenek, Senator Crowder, Senator Court, Senator Zenzinger. We are on co-sponsors on House Bill 1047. Senator Kerr, Senator Fenberg, Senator Kagan, Senator Fields, Senator Merrifield. Please add the President and Senator Kafalas, Senator Hill. With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1145 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Gardner, third reading of bills. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 1.
Senate Bill 1 by Senators Baumgardner and Cook and Representative Buck concerning transportation infrastructure funding.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 001 be laid over until Wednesday, March 28th.
28th. The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 1 till Wednesday, March 28. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and that will lay over. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 200.
Senate Bill 200 by Senators Tate and Priola and Representative Becker Kay and Pabon concerning modifications to the Public Employees Retirement Association hybrid defined benefit plan necessary to eliminate with a high probability the unfunded liability of the plan within the next 30 years and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 200 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good little bill. Vote yes.
Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we've done a lot of work on this bill, and we know that we need to deal with it this year. We know that it's got to get done. But based on the bill that came out of the Finance Committee, which basically is the bill that is before you right now, I can't vote for it. It just doesn't do enough to create shared responsibility, to protect retirees, and to make certain that our incoming people have the best retirement package available to them. So I can't be a yes. I will say that I thoroughly appreciate all the work that the good senators from this side of the aisle have put into this bill. And assuming the bill passes today, I want to continue seeing us make sure it's the best bill possible in the long run. But today's bill simply doesn't cut it, so I will be a no vote. Thank you.
Senator Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, please vote no on Senate Bill 200. Please don't force employees to increase their contributions by a potentially crippling 3%. It's too much, and it's unnecessary. Unnecessary to get PERA stabilized, to shore it up. Please don't make retirees have a very low COLA cap after a suspension of 2 years of only 1 1/4%. They have given their all for our state. We don't need to do this to them. It is too much, and it is unnecessary. Please do not allow employers to make no contribution whatsoever with any contribution increase in the effort to stabilize and shore up PERA. That is not fair. That is not right, especially when you bear in mind that the contributions required to keep PERA in absolutely tip-top shape over the last 15 years, that has been underfunded over those 15 years. It's time that we start sharing the responsibility for getting PERA on a sound, completely firm footing for the foreseeable future. This bill is unfair, unnecessary, too severe, and it doesn't share the responsibility evenly throughout the various people who are involved with PERA. And lastly, please don't agree to a defined contribution scheme which whittles away at the very basis of PERA a pension system that provides for everybody till the end of their lives, but instead moves us all to a each man and woman for him or herself scheme in an effort to lure them from pensions to 401ks. It undermines the thing, PERA, the pension scheme, that has stood us in such good stead since 1932. So please vote no on Senate Bill 200.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also urge a no vote on this bill. I want you to think about this in a little bit different context at home. Say you have two young boys, Bobby and Jimmy, and Bobby's older, and you say, hey, we're going to set up a college fund, and your allowance has to go into that fund, and we'll match that money and we'll put it in there, and you too can eventually go to college. And then a number of years later, the older son wants to go to college, and you say to them, well, we haven't been putting in our share enough to make this fund work, so you probably can't go to college. And oh, by the way, your younger brother doesn't have to put into the fund. They can go their own way. So you're definitely not going to college. That's basically what we're doing here. But it's far worse than that. It's not just going off to college. A lot of these people are on a very limited income, who are teachers particularly. And what we're telling them is that the value of their income is going to go down as they age. So when those hospital bills come due and when those drug costs come due, it won't be just food on the table. It'll be all your expenses. And hey, you know, it was a deal, but it's not really a deal. You can live without, you know, a much lower standard of life and have a hard time making ends meet. And to me, I find it cruel. We have not put in what we should have been putting in to this fund, and that is a big reason it is insolvent. There are other reasons, not insolvent, excuse me, it is in need of some repair. And there are other reasons going on, but that's a huge one. And we used to talk about this very issue 30 years ago in the House chamber where I was. And that was the conversation, how much do you put in to make this thing operate? And here we are, not putting enough in and making the people we promised a good retirement to that didn't make as much money, doing one of the most important jobs as far as teaching in our society. Sorry, you may not be able to pay your medical bills. Sorry, you may not be able to put food on the table. Sorry, we didn't mean it. We didn't really have a deal. But we do. And I find, I know it's going to go over the House and be changed, but I see this as a setup to stretch the bargaining position way to one side so that when you go to conference committee, you get I don't know how to characterize it, a deal that's less advantageous to workers who depend on it, and possibly overcorrecting and hurting people in the process. And that's what I see the defined contribution plan as, very, very straight up. People are in para, they knew they had a deal, and a defined contribution thing undermines that, and we all know that. And so I ask you to vote no. Keep faith with the people who taught our children. Keep faith with the people that patrolled our highways. Keep faith with corrections officers. Keep faith with people that maintain your open space in some cases. These people all had an agreement, and we're undermining that. So I ask for a no vote on this. And I also ask, as this thing goes through the process, that we start thinking about how the human impact of what we're talking about here.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we talk about Senate Bill 200, sometimes down here we get caught up in a particular bill, a particular amendment, and we start throwing around numbers, and we talk about how we need to support Senate Bill 200. We need to vote no on Senate Bill 200, which amendment we support and which we don't. But sometimes I think we lose focus on what a bill really does. And I want you to think about those of you that drove in here today and that the roads were cleared and safe. Our snowplow drivers did their job. Our state troopers were out there keeping us safe on the roads. Our prison guards were guarding our prisons. These are the people who we made promises to. Maybe not us individually, but us as the Colorado State Legislature, we have made promises to these people. And if you haven't heard about it, one of the professions that we have a shortage with right now are teachers. And in my district, in districts across the state, and districts across the country, we talk about recruiting and retaining the best teachers. And if we're in a teacher shortage right now, and we expect to recruit the best teachers and retain the best teachers, because that's part of it. You can recruit the best young person to come in and teach, but if they're only going to be there for 2, 3, or 4 years, and then you're out there trying to hire the next best person, it puts a lot of strain on a district's budget, puts a lot of strain on the schools, puts a lot of strain on the students themselves. And that is why we don't just say we're trying to recruit the best teachers, we're trying to recruit and retain. And that's what PARA is about, is retaining the best employees possible. We also have talked about shared responsibility, and I think that currently this bill doesn't live up to the goals we set out at the beginning of the session around shared responsibility. I'm hoping if this bill does continue forward that we get back to that idea of shared responsibility to keep these promises to our retirees, our teachers, our troopers, our snowplow drivers, our prison guards. Another point I want to make is that oftentimes we try to do things we don't have to. This is a case where I think if we did some smaller adjustments, we could still get to where we need to be. And just lastly, I have heard from far too many constituents and retirees that this bill is not in a place where I can support it at this time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be as brief as I can because I think the points have been covered. I do urge a no vote. I think we talked yesterday about the reasons that I don't believe and that many of us don't believe this is really a fair solution to what we all admit is a problem that needs to be addressed. But what's being frustrating is there was so much talk about shared responsibility at the beginning of these discussions, and the shared part just got thrown aside, and now all we have is responsibility. And those taking up the responsibility are the employees, and there's no shared responsibility on the part of the employers, but employees will have to, once again, shoulder the burden, and we'll solve the problem on the backs of teachers and firefighters and our public employees. And that's just not fair. Also, what's not fair is that to include a DC plan in this so-called solution, we have loaded a 6 to 9% cost in payroll additions to those who were to choose a DC. So we created a convoluted solution, so-called solution, to what is a fairly simple problem that we know we have. We have a financial negative para factor that we could have addressed without pulling in a lot of unnecessary political baggage. And I would urge you to think again about coming up with the most simple and logical solution that shares the responsibility across all those involved, and vote no, and let's see if we can make a reasonable, realistic solution to our para challenge.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is not a fair deal. It's just not a fair deal. and it's not the best remedy for our retirees, our state employees, and our teachers. It's not a fair deal. In fact, I would say that this deal is harsh. I would say that this deal does not really fix the problem that we need to be addressing. I would say that this deal is punitive. Have you been listening to your constituents? I have. I'm going to read some of the emails that I've received. I'm quite sure you have received the same emails as well. And what they're saying is that we should be opposing Senate Bill 200. Have you received any emails in your inbox asking you to oppose Senate Bill 200? Here's one. Please oppose Senate Bill 200 because it has not been amended enough to show sacrifice or to provide shared responsibility, especially as a retired employee. I live on a fixed income. And when you're dealing with people's income, they depend on every single penny, and you're putting people like this person in a sense of uncertainty and anxiety. They oppose the defined contribution plan because it only could give money to this plan for an entire career. What was promised is not given. The DC plan option created in SB 200 will cost an employee an additional 6 to 9% in contributions. I oppose the increase in employees' contributions because it's unfair to require people to pay more into their retirement plan that they will receive less benefits. Reducing COLA, lowering the PARA board recommendations of 5.1 to 1.25 is too low and increases the risk of our retired public employees not being secured in their retirement. Please oppose third reading on Senate Bill 200. Senator Fields, I'm asking you to oppose Senate Bill 200 on the third reading. It doesn't represent shared sacrifice. I am a retired teacher. I've made lots of sacrifice throughout my career as a teacher, and at the end, I expected a secured retirement plan. I am not eligible for Social Security because my plan did not provide that option. I paid into PARA for years and years in good faith agreement that they would pay for my retirement. Now the state is trying to re-engineer and renege on their promise. Vote no on Senate Bill 200. There are many, many, many other emails like this. And I've heard what they've said. To me, it's very clear. For me, it's very simple. We should all be opposing Senate Bill 200. We did have an amendment that I felt that was going to be the right fix, but it was rejected. And because that amendment was rejected, I have to be a no on Senate Bill 200. We need to hear what our constituents are saying. We need to hear what our retirees are saying. We need to hear what our state employees are saying. And we need to hear what our teachers are saying. And I'm standing with them. I oppose this bill.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, if there would be any reason to oppose Senate Bill 200, it would be that it doesn't do enough, not that it does too much. But I'd like to look at first a couple of points of agreement that I've heard across the aisle here. And at least from what I've heard, no one has disagreed with the fact that the Public Employee Retirement Association is underfunded by a significant amount. PARA themselves, of course, puts that at $32 billion. That's assuming a 7.25% investment return rate annually, which is by most economic measurements far too generous. And there are those who look at that and say, if you want, because we're actually not giving a guarantee of it's this much underfunded, but it's a probability of what will occur. And those who look at it a little more conservatively say it could be as much as $80 billion underfunded. So we agree on that there is a significant problem that needs to be fixed. Secondly, I've heard no one disagree with the point that we need to honor the commitments that we have made to para-retirees. Just last night, I was meeting with a group of people up in Evergreen, and one lady identified herself as a retired teacher. She said she taught for 27 years. She is a para-retiree. She asked me to fix the problem, not to kick the can down the road. Now, there's been quite a bit of discussion as to just who's been carrying the burden for reinforcing para's financial circumstance. And a recent study done on para was published in February of this year. Just let me give you just a couple of brief paragraphs here. It says, to fully appreciate the scale of the challenge, consider how much contributions increased between 2000 and 2016. And during this period, combined contribution rates from employees and employers jumped more than 1/3, from roughly 20% to 27% on average across all para divisions. But the increase was not evenly shared between public employees and taxpayers. Over that period of time, the average employee contribution fell from 8.5 to just over 8.3%, while the total taxpayer-funded employer share climbed from 11.4 to 18.4%. That's what we've been doing in the last, well, from 2000 to when the study's data ended at 2016. Put another way, taxpayers increased their contribution rate by more than 60%. If we want to talk about shared responsibility, it sounds like the share has been largely on the back of the taxpayers. And let me kind of describe that. That means in terms of school districts, that's the budget for that school district. But finally, Mr. President, I want to remind us of something that I discussed here on seconds, and I think it's very important that we keep this in mind, because it's not just how much and from whom, but should every employee have the option to choose a defined contribution plan rather than a defined benefit plan? Today, most employees for the state of Colorado are forced to participate in the defined benefit system. Of course, not legislators. So if it's fair for us, why shouldn't it be fair for the rest to give them the choice? And I remind you that in the case of teachers, at the end of 5 years, more than half of those who started are not there. But they were forced to be in the defined benefit program. And what did that more than half of those teachers who started get out of it? Less than nothing. Less than nothing. They were forced to participate in the program, to give their contribution rate, and the school district poured in their share. And if they leave the program before the 5 years, before they are vested, they can take nothing with them. Now, why did I say less than nothing? Because during that time period, their contribution rate for Social Security is 0. Here they have been participating in a pension plan for 3, 4 years, and there's no credit on their side, and that's because we are forcing them into it. At the bare minimum, a defined contribution plan needs to be a part of the scenario for every employee for the state of Colorado. I believe we are we are cheating those who are not given that choice, and it's just a choice. They can go for the defined benefit program. Mr. President, I am proudly voting for Senate Bill 200. I recognize that there's a long road to go before we have a finished product, but I think for the Senate's side, this is a good first step, and I urge its adoption. Thank you very much.
Senator Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've just heard my respected colleague from Berthoud say that if you leave the retired defined benefit program after less than 5 years, you come out with less than nothing, and that is just not true. It's wrong. The senator, with all due respect, misunderstands. If you leave the defined benefit program of PERA after 3 years, making $25,000 a year for that 3 years, you have some choices. You can take $6,634.35 in cash. That is not less than nothing for 3 years' work. Or you can leave it in and then take leave it in until you're 65 and then take $39,610 in cash. That is not less than nothing. Or you can leave it in and then when you retire, you can get $306 a month for the rest of your life, no matter how long you live. And that is not less than nothing. Indeed, for a person of an average lifespan, that comes out to $107,185. $107,000 is not less than nothing. Not only is it not less than nothing, it is more than you can get from 3 years' savings under any other scheme, and certainly more than you can get under a 401k. So, by all means, vote yes on Senate Bill 200, but do not vote yes on it under the misapprehension that if we keep the system as it is, that those who work for less than 5 years under PERA will get less than nothing. They'll get $107,000 more than nothing if they keep their money in the program and then take a pension, to which they will be entitled.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I wasn't going to come down because I hate to play Pete and repeat, but I am going to say it again. If you teach for a short period of time and then you leave and you take your money out, you don't walk out empty-handed. I did that. I'm living proof. I did that. It was not a smart move on my part. We were young. We were starting a family. My husband and I are both teachers on a teacher salary. We needed to have the cash on hand to make ends meet because teacher salaries 40 years ago were even worse than they are today. So we took that money out, and I had what I had put in, my fair share, and took that out. When I went back into teaching, I then had to go back and I had to buy those years back, which was much more expensive. So was I financially prudent? No, but I was young and we were foolish, but we were trying to make ends meet. We need to know and understand what the facts are and what the truth is. When we talk about someone's retirement, and PERA is the retirement plan that people entered into when they signed their contracts with the belief that, yes, Colorado's going to be true to what they said. Many people that retired were counting on a 3.5%. When we changed and made it 2.5%, and now we're hitting again, it is affecting real people in each of our districts. This is not a made-up story. These are real people that are counting on us to be true to what we said when they came in to their profession as a state employee, as a teacher, and now we're saying we're going to pull the carpet out from under you, but only you are going to make the sacrifice. We're not going to ask employers. I'm still waiting to hear an explanation why that portion is not being asked to be a part of the solution. I've never understood that. I don't get it. When we have a problem, we come to the table, and we all come to the table. We all stand forward and say, we're going to put our knees to the ground, and we're going to really hit it hard to figure out what the solutions are. But when one person or one group is standing on the bystand and watching and not being a part of the solution, someone please help me understand why that's okay. Help me understand that. Because the number of emails that my colleague from Aurora read, I could triplicate. Because people are asking, why, and is this the best you can do? Is this the best offer for a solution? I think not. We have work to do, and it needs to be all hands on deck. It needs to be each and every part of the solution at the table making an equal sacrifice. I urge a no vote on Senate Bill 200 as it is going out of the Senate. I think we could have done so much more. It is about fair contributions for all. I stand on the backs of all of the retirees in Colorado who now are very concerned. How am I going to make ends meet? Each of us will face them when we go back to our districts. Listen to them. Look into their eyes and recognize they're not making up a story. They're telling you their life. This is not the best we could have done, and I'm disappointed. Vote no on Senate Bill 200. Thank you.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, some of the information I have given at the microphone here has been called into question, and I must admit that I should modify my statements, but just barely. Let me just read to you, Mr. President, a brief statement that's actually on the PARA website, which says, if you do not have 5 years, this is concerning taking out your contributions from the defined benefit program. If you do not have 5 years of earned service credit, that means you're not vested, you will receive a 50% match only on contributions and interest received by PARA on or before December 31st, 2010. So yes, it is correct that you can pull out anything you have put in there if you aren't vested, so long as you did it before 2010. Now, if I can do my math, that's about 8 years ago. So anybody who's been working for the last less than 5 years doesn't count. It's still correct. A student or a teacher, according to the information that I have been told, as well as the information that I find, is out in the cold. But a defined contribution program would, in fact, serve their needs much better. Thank you very much.
Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's important that we have accurate information. The good senator from Berthoud is correct. The match is what he's talking about. You get your own investment back, regardless. The match is what is time limited by that statement. The match as in what PARA's trust fund the employer put in, but you regardless get your own money plus interest back no matter when you leave, as the good senator from Aurora experienced when she did it. That is still in place. It's the match from the employer that is related to that time constraint. You always get your own money back, regardless. Thank you.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to sort of try to correct a little bit of misrepresentation or mistake that the good senator from Berthoud was speaking about earlier. It caught my ear about 60% increase on the backs of taxpayers. Well, if you remember, there were some years where we were more than fully funded. And so the contribution amount of employers, taxpayers, dropped significantly. Then, of course, we learned never to assume good times are always going to be around. We hit some rockier times, and the contributions, which had been here before the good times hit, and the contributions dropped down to here, which was not wise. We were fully funded, even more than fully funded. And then to get back up, there's a 60% increase. But to say that that is a 60% increase to taxpayers is a little misrepresentation of the math. Thanks.
Senator Martinez-Humenick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, 90% of the companies today don't even offer pension plans. They only offer 401ks for their employees, and there's a reason for that. And the public companies that I have worked for outside of this Golden Dome required that 5-year investment and to be vested before I could get any retirement benefits. And that's happened to a number of family members. I also wanted to just tell you some excerpts from Frank Shafros's article in Governing, which we all get. One of the things that we're forgetting is that PARA also affects our local government employees as well as the state employees. It's not just teachers. It's not just our firefighters. It's not just our Department of Corrections people. This actually affects many, many people. Had this been taken care of properly 15 or 20 years ago, we might not be in this predicament where we're being asked to do some reform that maybe all of us don't like, but is going to have to be done because we have to make tough decisions here. PARA affects myself and 10 other members of my family. And they're asking, how are you going to make sure that I get some retirement and there's not just a big goose egg with zero money there when I retire? And I think that's what we're trying to do. Is this perfect? Heck no. But we have to try to do something, because if we don't, there won't be any funds there for anyone. Our local government employees, our state employees, our teachers. So what has happened with regards to PARA in many states that local governments provide health benefits for is they're having to reform these big time. Yes, it's important to be able to attract good staff in all of these areas. However, if you have a fund that is not going to be able to be solvent in years down the road when people need it, what's going to happen is those people are going to come back to us and say, you didn't do enough. You didn't do anything when we were in trouble, when this reform was needed. You know, Texas has changed how they're doing things. They've actually brought in financial planners to handle their public pension funds. What an idea and a concept to bring in people who actually work with investing to make sure that something is going to be solvent long term. We've heard that the combination of longer lifespans and the insufficient modifications that have been made to this point and what they are meaning to not only our local governments, but our state government employees, all of the public employees who are invested in PARA. So we can't allow our local governments to fail either because we do nothing now. And what's going to end up happening with local governments is that as they struggle to pay their para-retirement benefits, they are not going to have funding for fixing of their local roads, for providing the services that every single citizen in their communities desires to have for quality of life and expects to have for quality of life. So while this may not be the perfect solution, we still need to continue to talk about this and do something. And I've heard from people on both sides that they need reform now. We need to look at reforming now. And yes, this is part of our jobs and part of the tough decisions that we are elected to do. But we must figure out a way to make this fund solvent for everyone, all of the public employees moving forward.
Senator Hill.
Mr. President, colleagues, I'd called back every single one of the teachers that reached out to me from my district, and we had, I think, good conversations. And maybe I just wanted to share what one teacher relayed to me, someone I've known for years, and we've had lots of conversations back and forth about education policy, but sums up for me why I support especially this defined contribution aspect of it. She said, Owen, we haven't agreed on a lot of things over the last 6 years that you've been in office, but I respect how much you've always tried to empower teachers who do one of the most important jobs in our society today. And I couldn't agree more on that front. She said, you trust us to do that job. I think you should also vote to trust us to make our own retirement decisions. I would not have chosen it, but I think every new teacher coming in should have the option for a defined contribution plan. I agree. We should trust our teachers and certainly trust them to make the decision that best fits them and their families in this situation. So respectfully, we'll be supporting this bill.
Senator Zinzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would urge a no vote on Senate Bill 200 for a couple of different reasons. We do need to address the unfunded liability, but I think this particular bill is an overreach. It does more than what it needs to do, and in a way that has some pretty severe and negative consequences for the people that are going to be feeling the effects of it. We tried to work to address some of those key points. We tried. We tried to have a give and a take. We tried to say, you know what, we don't quite think that that's the solution for the employer contribution part. How about this? And we were told no. We said, you know what, the COLA is not quite there. How about we do this instead? And just a slight modification instead of going all the way. Nope, we were told no. We tried really hard to say, look, we get that we need to make some small adjustments, but the highest average salary, for example, does it really need to be, 7 years? Could we maybe do 5 instead? We were told no. We said, look, we understand that we might need to address the retirement age, but do we really need to kick it all the way up to 65? And we said, could we maybe adjust that? Could we maybe say 60? Could we maybe compromise a little bit and work on that? And we were told no. We said, why are we doing no net to gross? Why no FTE equivalent? Why? So we tried to find compromises on the DC solution. We tried to find compromises on all of these little adjustments that are actually not little in the bill as it is right now. So at this point in time, I just feel like we're not compromising, and it's true, we still have this unfunded liability out there, but I don't believe that this is the correct course at this time, and so I'm going to have to be a no.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we've had some great conversation about this. One of the things I think that we need to focus on, there's been some conversation on what the liability is. And of course, that's a hard number to pinpoint specifically. I know I sat on the Legislative Audit Committee for a number of years here, and the focus of the para unfunded liability was always critical in our eyes. We thought it was somewhere in the high 30s. I remember this last year, every time I would have a conversation with Mr. Smith, prior to his passing, was where are we at right now? Well, everything's fine. Everything's fine. And then the last year, Greg came in front of us at the Legislative Audit Committee and said, Senator, we have a problem. Great. That's the beginning. That's the beginning of at least looking and identifying that we have a problem that needs to be addressed now. And then I received a letter from Mr. Smith later in the summer because we were trying to identify specifically what that amount was. And his letter back to me stated, based upon GASB accounting rules, taking a look at where we're at right now, what we're required under law to identify as the unfunded liability, that number was approximately $50 billion. 50 billion. Now you can take a look at what our whole entire state budget is for everything, and I'm not talking about the general fund, I'm talking about the whole enchilada. So it's going to be somewhere between, what's 28.8 billion this year? So it's almost, we're almost taking a look at 2 years of the total budget of the entire state of Colorado. Now here's what I would ask you. People were saying, well, we tried to compromise and we looked at solutions. Could we just modify this a little bit? Colleagues, we have a responsibility to our children and grandchildren to fix what we all help create, kicking that can down the road for multiple generations. And we're not talking about this fix is looking at a 30-year window approximately. It could be a little less, it could be a little bit more. But when we start taking a look at just dabbling, just turning the knob slightly, as I've heard the last couple of days, what are we talking about? My children? Nope, they'll probably be gone too. My grandchildren? Great-grandchildren? How long till we're going to fix it? How long are we going to saddle future generations with debt? And we know that somebody is going to have to pay those bills at some point, or we're not going to have the money to pay obligations. This is about stewardship. I will be in full support of this bill as it is written and as it is in its current form this year, because I believe we have a total responsibility to stand up and make sure that we are taking care of fiscal stewardship, and we're doing it within our time here in the legislature. I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the conversation today. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my colleagues here in the House for all the work and stakeholder meetings.
In the House, Senator Tate?
I meant my house.
Oh.
Mr. President.
My apologies. Please continue.
Bipartisan legislation is messy, especially when something's so complicated. And I do want to commend my colleague from Louisville who said it's a simple problem that we just need a simple solution. I agree with 50% of that. It is a simple problem. It's simply enormous. Unfortunately, the solutions aren't simple, and it'll be affecting a lot of people. Obviously, we'll be revisiting this topic here in this chamber some weeks from now, but here in this present moment, I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion here in the Senate? Motion for the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 200. Are there any no votes? Senator Merrifield, Senator Todd, Senator Williams, Senator Aguilar, Senator Moreno, Senator Kagan, Senator Court, Senator Kerr, Senator Donovan, Senator Fenberg, Senator Garcia, Senator Guzman, Senator Kafalas, Senator Fields, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Jones, with 19 ayes, 16 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 200 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Lundberg, Senator Lambert, Senator Gardner, Senator Hill, Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Marble, Senator Neville, Senator Crowder. Please add the President. General orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the committee of the whole for consideration of general order second reading of bills consent calendar.
The motion is for the Senate to resolve itself into the committee of the whole for consideration of the general order second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will resolve itself in the committee of the whole for consideration of the general order second reading of bills consent calendar. Senator Holbert will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. The court rule is relaxed. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the titles to all of the bills listed on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar?
House Bill 1254 by Representative Van Winkle and Senator Smallwood concerning the modification of the foreclosure process on property that is encumbered by a deed of trust. Senate Bill 205 by Senators Marble and Quorum and Representatives Cadland and McLaughlin concerning the regulation of industrial hemp as an agricultural product and in connection therewith and define the unprocessed seeds of industrial hemp as a commodity under the Commodity Handler Act and industrial hemp as a farm product under the Farm Products Act. House Bill 1098 by Representatives Sane and Gray and Senator Marble concerning the expanded ability of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to finance the remediation of oil and gas locations. House Bill 1238 by Representatives Jackson and Cadland and Senator Marble concerning the continuation of the Wildland Urban Interface Training Advisory Board and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations of the 2017 Census Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies. House Bill 1239 by Representative Landgraf and Senator Scott concerning the continuation of the Sunset Law, the Environmental Management System Permit Program and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations of the Census Report of the Department of Regulatory Agencies by allowing the program to repeal.
Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a request to remove two bills from the second reading consent calendar. House Bill 1254 and House Bill 1098, and I request that they be moved to the end of the second reading of bills calendar to follow Senate Bill 11, House Bill 1134.
The motion is to lay over, or excuse me, that is not a motion. I've done this enough times. House Bill 1254 and House Bill 1098 will be removed from the consent calendar and will appear at the end of the general orders second reading of bills calendar. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whoops, almost messed that up. I move all of the bills on the second reading, general order, second reading of bills consent calendar. The bills will be consisting of Senate Bill 205, House Bill 1238, and House Bill 1239.
The motion before the body is the approval of the bills listed on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar. Is there any discussion on any of the bills remaining on the consent calendar? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the bills listed on the second reading of bills consent calendar. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bills are adopted. Assistant Majority Leader Shuffle. Scott. My God. Sorry. Scott. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
It must be the hair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we rise and report.
The motion is for the body to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Would the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee holds leave reports had in consideration the following attached bills being second reading thereof, makes following recommendations in order on Senate Bill 205, passed on second read order, gross place on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1238, House Bill 1239, passed second read order, revised place on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1254, House Bill 1098, removed from the general order second reading of bills consent calendar and placed at the end of the general order second reading of bills calendar for 3/27/18.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the report.
Motion for the body is the adoption of the report to the committee of the whole. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, or absent, 0 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 205 passed on second reading, order engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1238, House Bill 1239 passed on second reading, order revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1254, House Bill 1098 removed from the general order second reading of bills consent calendar and placed at the end of the general order second reading of bills calendar for 3/27/18. General order second reading of bills. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the committee of the whole for consideration of general order second reading of bills.
Motion for the body is for the Senate to resolve itself in committee of the whole for consideration of the general order second reading of bills calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will resolve itself in the committee of the whole for consideration of the general order second reading of bills calendar, and Senator Holbert will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. The court rule is relaxed. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 185?
Senate Bill 185 by Senator Smallwood and Representative Everett concerning the use of deadly physical force against a person who has made an illegal entry into a place of business.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 185 on second reading.
Senator Kerr. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read L005?
Amendment L005, Senate Bill 185 by Senator
Senator Kerr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I move L005.
To the amendment, Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is an important bill for us to discuss, talk about before it just slips by. And I want to make sure that, first of all, everyone has had a chance to look at the title concerning the use of deadly physical force. So we're talking about not just people getting into a fist fight, not just some pushing or shoving. We're talking about using deadly physical force and against a person who has made an illegal entry. So something illegal is happening, and there's deadly force involved, and we're talking in a place of business. So obviously, as we all know, we already have this statute in place for our dwellings where we live. Someone comes across the threshold of our home and is threatening our family members. So but this bill changes that to say that businesses, any place that a business is happening. So with L005, what we're trying to do is make sure that we are strictly defining that we are talking about legal businesses, businesses that are operating within the law, and specifically listing some businesses where this would not apply. And as it says in L005, place of business does not include a business or it could be a legal business, but where these illegal activities are taking place. A location at which prostitution, gambling, unlawful gambling, unlawful distribution, manufacture, dispensing, or sale of controlled substances, so illegal drugs, unlawful sale or manufacturing of deadly weapons, or chop shop activities, that if those activities are taking place, that this statute would not apply. Also, if the business owner, the lawful business owner, has possession of an illegal weapon, that this statute would not apply to removing their liability if they are using an illegally obtained deadly weapon. With that, I ask for the adoption of L005.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L005? Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate the input from the senator. However, all of this is really unnecessary as it pertains to this bill. We already have laws related to obtaining weapons illegally, and a place of business in the state of Colorado is certainly not going to be defined by the state as anything that's in this list. These are all illegal activities: prostitution, gambling, unlawful distribution of controlled substance, chop shops, that sort of thing. These are not businesses. They're not registered with the Secretary of State, so I would urge a no vote on Amendment 5.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, perhaps you'd like to scratch that part of the bill and leave the part that talks about illegally obtained weapons, because there is a possibility that an owner would have an illegally obtained weapon. And so I would still urge a yes voter to consider severing the amendment.
Further discussion on L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L005. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it, and L005 is lost. There is no further amendment? Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 180? There is an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read L006?
Amendment L006 to Senate Bill 185 by Senator Aguilar, amend printed bill page 2, strike line 24 and substitute force, except that such immunity does not apply if the occupant, owner, manager, employee used deadly force against the other person because of that person's race, color, ancestry, religion, national origin, physical or mental disability, or sexual orientation.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L006.
To the amendment, Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we read every day in the newspapers about innocent children of color who are killed because somebody feels threatened. The most recent attack occurred about 10 days ago in Sacramento, where a young man in his own backyard holding a cell phone was shot. The most famous attack was against Trayvon Martin, who was killed in Florida carrying only Skittles because he wore a hoodie and somebody was afraid of him. My concern with Senate Bill 185 is that it allows people who may harbor racial and ethnic discriminations to have the authority to say that they felt threatened by somebody because of their color, because of their ethnic background, because of their dress, and get away with killing them. So I think that if we find that the person who was killed is a protected class, that this immunity should not apply. And I ask for your support for Amendment L006.
Further discussion on L006, Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator from Denver, for bringing this amendment L006, because this is an issue that is really dear to my heart because it gets at the focus of profiling. It gets at the issue of racial disparities. And we know that this bill is really an expansion of Stand Your Ground. And if you know anything about Stand Your Ground, it means that you shoot first. And we know in these stand your ground laws across the nation, oftentimes it is a young brown or black child that's going to be impacted by this type of legislation. There is research and there is statistics that is proven that far too often, when you see a white man with a gun and he's encountered by someone that's black and brown, the end result is going to be a dead body. We have cases and cases and cases, not only with police, but also with retailers, with homeowners. There is a real reality to people being threatened because of someone's color of their skin. I support this amendment because what this amendment does, it does exempt them from being a part of the stand your own ground. I can share with you research. If they have a gun and a black person is there or a brown person is there, they're going to end up being dead. This is a form of racial profiling, this bill. And this bill will cause the person who is in that business, it would cause them to pause and think. Because if they are threatened and that person happens to be black or brown, then just like the shooter gets immunity, there will be no immunity if the person is black and brown. So I would urge a yes on L006.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with respect to the senator from Arapahoe County, and Mr. Chair, this is to the amendment, but the senator from Arapahoe County described the bill and why the amendment's needed and asserted that Senate Bill 185 is somehow a bill for racial profiling, and that therefore L006 is needed. As I look at Senate Bill 185, it is devoid of any descriptions about race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, ancestry, whatever I've left out of protected classes. This bill is about a lot of things with respect to protecting one's business and protecting one's person and one's property. There are people who run businesses on the first floor and their homes on the second floor. There are those of us who have businesses that are 4 blocks from our home and we're at our business more than the other. And what this amendment would do is try to open up the whole question of, well, why did that business owner use deadly force when someone entered illegally for the commission of a crime and used deadly force against the perpetrator, and the perpetrator was of another race? Maybe the perpetrator, unknown to the business owner, was of a different sexual orientation or a different gender. Did you use deadly force because of that? That's what this would open up. The fact of the matter is, in these cases, a business owner overwhelmingly used deadly force for fear of their life, for the protection of their business, for protection of their livelihood, for protection of their family who may work in that business. To introduce this notion by this amendment that the bill is about racial profiling, the fact is the amendment introduces that.
The amendment introduces that notion. The amendment starts asking that question. The bill itself is very specific as to the facts and circumstances that are necessary for standing one's ground in one's own business. How many people in this chamber, if you're paying attention, how many own your own business and have your own business location? How many of you? I don't know about you, but I'm in my business at midnight sometimes. Have been known to be there at 2 in the morning. I don't think the question if my business were broken into at that time, and I had a business in a downtown area. I had my law practice in a downtown area one time that was great during the day and was not a very good area at 1 in the morning. And I don't think my question would have been, is this intruder of some particular race? Are they some particular ancestry, religion? I think my question would be easily answered that I feared for my life and everything that I held dear. This is not about racial profiling. The bill's not about racial profiling. I ask for a no vote on L06.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I want to tell you a little bit of a fun story. I had a colleague from the Westside Clinic who retired a few weeks ago, and she asked that people come dressed to their retirement as what they would like to be in their next life. And I hope I offend no one, but I came dressed as a white man. And why would I do that? Because if I were a white man and I walked into Senator's business at midnight, the odds are he would ask me, "Are you lost? Can I help you?" But if I were a Mexican boy wearing a hoodie with tattoos, the odds are he would shoot first and ask questions later. I in no way impugn the motives of the sponsor of this bill. What I come here to say is that his life experiences are not mine. And the treatment he gets when he walks into any place, even in the state of Colorado, is different than the treatment I get until they find out I'm a senator or a doctor. And so in no way do I think my colleagues on the opposite aisle would intentionally racial profile. What I am telling them about is lived experience. What I am telling them about is something they will never learn because they've never had the experience of being discriminated against just because of the way that they look or just because of the way that they dress. And so what the bill actually says, if you look at page 3, line 16 and 17, when the occupant reasonably believes that the other person might use any physical force, no matter how slight. So what are the odds that the person who shot Trayvon Martin reasonably believed that he might use physical force? Clearly, the Florida courts thought they were high. And so a young man who committed no crime was killed. And the gentleman who did it got away with it because he reasonably believed that person. Now, maybe it wasn't because he was black and wearing a hoodie. Maybe if he was white and wearing a suit like the senators on the other side of the aisle, he would have felt just as threatened and killed him too. But I bet the jury verdict would have been different. And so that is my lived experience as a Hispanic woman, as the mother of brown children, as the family member of nieces and nephews who have done some things that were not the smartest thing in the world. I would not have wanted any of them killed for that because somebody reasonably believed that they might have done something to them. and in any way, shape, or form felt threatened. And that is the difference between living brown and having white privilege.
Senator Smallwood. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague from Denver bringing some of these things up. And I do want to stick to the amendment first because, as my colleague from El Paso County mentioned, it's only the amendment that brings up race. The bill itself, as it's written, and I do want to point out one line specifically in here, this bill protects the business owner of those hundreds of businesses in Colorado that are owned by African Americans. This bill protects those owners. This bill protects the owners of those thousands of businesses in Colorado where the owner is Hispanic. This bill protects men and women of people of all sexual orientations. This bill is not about race or gender or sexual orientation or anything else. This bill protects everybody equally. The statistics that keep being brought up are related to stand your ground laws, and respectfully, I disagree with the senator from Arapahoe County who says that this is a stand your ground bill, because it's not. This is a bill that's dealing with a law that's already on the books today, that we've already decided in Colorado is a discussion of the Castle Doctrine, where we should feel safe in our own homes. This is not adding a new law. This is modifying what we've already decided as a state. We feel comfortable saying that you should be safe in your home. What I'm saying, and what a lot of the proponents are saying, is you should also be safe in your business. I haven't heard anybody come to me and say, hey, the Castle Doctrine as it's written today in our state that defines that you should be safe in your own home, we need to clarify that to introduce race or gender or sexual orientation on the law that's already on the books today. Nobody's talking about that today. So therefore, I think Amendment 6 is absolutely unnecessary. I would not want to bring these sort of topics into this bill. They don't exist today. I'd ask for a no vote on Amendment 6. Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I realize that we're debating L006, but I'm going to talk about the bill since that's where our colleagues want to go with this conversation. Is that number one, clearly, I'm a woman of color. I have clearly been a business owner, and I can understand that we need to protect our businesses and our assets and what we have invested in our businesses. And I'm not necessarily concerned about protecting our businesses, because if you're a smart business owner, you will have those protections in place through security systems, security guards in your building. What I am more concerned about is not if this is profiling, racial profiling. I'm concerned about if it will lead to profiling. And my colleagues have already discussed that. Just this past week in Sacramento, there was a 20-year-old African-American man in the backyard of his grandparents. And police seized upon him, thinking he had a gun. Well, he fit the profile. He was African American and 21. And he wasn't wearing a hoodie. And they assumed that he was carrying a gun. He was carrying a cell phone. And so there are too many assumptions that are made about people of color along implicit biases. We've had the debate about profiling in our state, and I've worked with many of you across the aisle when we saw the cases around the country, such as Trayvon Martin. So let us not set up a system that will create that type of environment. Be a smart business owner. You'll have security systems, you'll have security guards, you'll lock the doors, but don't let someone who may be profiled walk into the business and get killed and lose their life because they have a cell phone. Again, I get this. I've been a business owner. I've had retail space. I understand what that means. I also understand what that means if we pass this piece of legislation, what it can lead to. And honestly, I don't want to see people getting killed because a business owner assumes someone might be threatening their place of business. That's got to happen through forced entry. What if it's one of your customers and you just don't feel comfortable about the person that's walking in and you make assumptions? So I'm going to ask you for a no vote on this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm rising to speak in favor of L006. I spend a lot of time staring through my windshield. My district is one of those that you can't get there from here, and so drive time is long and fills most weekends. And I spend a lot of that time in my truck either listening to podcasts or conservative talk radio or, whatever station, frankly, I can get at the top of Monarch Pass. And one of the reasons that I find value in spending my drive time on this is it often exposes me to different ideas. It makes me listen to an opinion that perhaps is outside my own, a different one than I may hear in the lobby, a different one than I may hear in this chamber. And recently I was listening to a podcast that covered a New York Times article, and the New York Times article was covering an extensive study that had just been released. And this study happened over 3 decades, and followed millions of kids over 30 years. This is a comprehensive, incredible study. And what it looked at was, why are black boys not succeeding in our country? That was the question it was trying to answer. And many ideas have been posited on this. Is it the education they have access to as children? Is it if they get to continue on a university or college or have access to trade schools? Is it the community that they grow up in? Is it the neighborhood they grow up in? Is it the city that they grow up in? Is it the income that they earn as teenagers? Is it the income that their parents earn? Is it the family structure? Do they have a single parent? Are they living at their grandparents'? Do they have 2 parents? And after looking at all of these variables, the study came to this conclusion. There is not one variable that we can point to that points to the success or failure of a young black man except for racism. We can eliminate almost every other variable. We can compare kids that have the exact same upbringing, and the study continues to point back to, after studying millions of kids over 3 decades, that we still have pervasive racism in our country against young black men. Now, this racism exists against other minorities as well, but the study showed how punishing it is towards young black men. So I was thinking about this podcast and reading this amendment, and it became clear to me that this is exactly why we do need this amendment, right? We still have work to do, a lot of work, in fact, in order to stand up for minorities and make sure that we do call out that we as a country still have an underlying level of racism against young black men and other minorities. And so that is why we do need to actually literally bring this idea into this bill, and that's what this amendment does. There was additional commentary that this study brought to light that we have, racism is tied to stereotypes. That's the basis, one of the bases. But with young black men, we have a hyper-stereotyped view and our reaction to young black men. That is, they are scary, intimidating, and violent. Right? This is the hyper stereotype that this study illuminated. And the study even goes on further, and the article suggests because of this hyper stereotype that we actually do need policies to specifically address the punishing reach of racism. And so that's why I ask for your support on L006. It is a genuine attempt to show that we need to specifically address some of these pervasive elements of racism that we do not always want to talk about. This is not an easy thing for us as a community to acknowledge, to say it exists and we should work on it, because we are part of that community, and so we are asking ourselves to do that work. So I ask for your support on L006. I think it's an important step in reacting to a very timely study that I hope we can all be genuine about of trying to address. Thank you.
Senator Smallwood. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, again, amendment. This bill is not about race. It's not about gender. It's not about sexual orientation. If you think that without Amendment 6, Colorado's business owners are going to turn into an army of murderous, racist, sexist, homophobes, then you should vote yes on Amendment 6. If not, you should vote no. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm offended by what you just said. I truly am. I have hundreds and thousands of business owners in Senate District 29. You probably have some too. I haven't received one email from a business owner that said that they wanted to have this bill to use deadly force. What you just heard from the senator from Douglas County is unbelievable. It's hurtful. He wants you to believe that this bill is not about stand your ground. Well, is the foundation of stand your ground. It's about expanding it to businesses, people who own businesses, giving them the opportunity to use deadly force. And no one's asking for it. But I can tell you why I support L006 and I oppose Senate Bill 185 is because walking while black in Colorado and across this nation is real. And there is a perceived threat when you're someone that's black. And when you're a person of color and you're amongst, let's say, a group of people who are primarily white, someone says that you're out of place. You're out of place. You don't belong here. It happens in our malls while black kids are shopping. It happens when you go to a store and the store owner believes that you don't have enough money to buy that item or that product. We have people that are making judgments every single day based on someone's color of their skin. Yes, this bill is about standing your ground and extending deadly force to business owners. So by introducing this amendment, L006, it gives us an opportunity for those of you who may not understand the experience of being black and the perception that that causes. And far too often, it causes people to be fearful. I asked the bill sponsor when we were in committee, has he ever noticed when he's shopping in a mall or out there, have you ever noticed people in retail overly observing someone of color? And you know what he said? No, he's never seen that. When you talk about the lens of experience that people bring to the workplace, he's never seen that. He's never seen that. And he has not seen it because he's privileged. And privilege is given, is not ever asked for. So I urge a no vote on L006. A yes vote and a no. A Senate 5, please.
Yeah. Senate will stand in a senatorial 5. Senate will come back to order. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we lay over Senate Bill 185 until Wednesday, March 28th.
Motion is to lay over Senate Bill 185 to Wednesday, March 28th. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 185 will lay over until Wednesday, March 28th. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we lay over the balance of the second reading calendar till Wednesday, March 28th.
That is an appropriate motion, Senator, Assistant Majority Leader, but I wonder if we might look at Senate Bill 204 and House Bill 1237 before we do that. I had notes that we were going to have Neville move 1237 to approach and 204 to Monday, April 9th. You want to come up? Ray, you go ahead and do that. 1237 to approach, 204 to Monday, April 9th. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that
Would you please withdraw your prior motion?
I withdraw my prior motion.
Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we lay over Senate Bill 204 till Monday, I believe, April 9th.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 204 to Monday, April 9th. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 204 will lay over to Monday, April 9th. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 18-1237 be moved back to, or to, I should say, the Committee on Appropriations.
The motion is to move House Bill 18-1237 back to Appropriations Committee. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1237 was moved to Appropriations. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I now move the balance of the calendar for today on second reading of bills be laid over until Wednesday, March 28th.
28th. The motion is to lay over the balance of the second reading calendar until Wednesday, March 28th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the balance of the calendar will lay over. Assistant Majority Leader Scott. Rise and report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we rise and report.
The motion is for a body to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will enthusiastically rise and report.
Oh, that's consent, sorry. Okay, it's all good. Thanks.
Senate will come back to order. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee has met, had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs lead reports that in consideration of the following task bills being the second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 185, Senate Bill 52, Senate Bill 166, House Bill 1148, House Bill 1018, Senate Bill 123 is amended, House Bill 1242, Senate Bill 192, Senate Bill 197, House Bill 1199, House Bill 1246, House Bill 1134, House Bill 1254, House Bill 1098 laid over until 3/28/18, retaining their place on the calendar, Senate Bill 204 laid over until 4/9/18, retaining its place on the calendar, House Bill 1237, refer to the Committee on Appropriations.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the report.
Motion for the body is the adoption of the report to the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 185, Senate Bill 52, Senate Bill 166, House Bill 1148, House Bill 1018, Senate Bill 123 is amended, House Bill 1242, Senate Bill 192, Senate Bill 197, House Bill 1199, House Bill 1246, House Bill 1134, House Bill 1254, House Bill 1098 laid over until 3/28/18, retaining their place on the calendar. Senate Bill 204 laid over until 4/9/18, retaining its place on the calendar. House Bill 1237 referred to the Committee on Appropriations. Consideration of Governor's Appointments Consent Calendar. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read all the appointments on the Governor's Appointments Consent Calendar?
Member of the Mine Land Reclamation Board for term expiring March 1st, 2020, Lauren Duncan, MS of Littleton, Colorado, serves as an individual with substantial experience in conservation occasioned by the resignation of Randolph Craig Fisher of Fort Collins, Colorado, appointed. Members of the Board of Trustees for Western State Colorado University for terms expiring December 31st, 2021, Richard M. Todd of Centennial, Colorado, Republican, appointed. James G. Oates of Gunnison, Colorado, Republican, reappointed. Aquino G. Gallegos of San Luis, Colorado, Democrat, reappointed. Members of the Transportation Commission for terms expiring July 1st, 2021, Shannon Margaret Gifford, CFA, Denver, Colorado, to serve as a commissioner from the 1st Transportation District, reappointed. Luella C. Chavez D'Angelo of Lone Tree, Colorado, to serve as a commissioner from the 3rd Transportation District, appointed. Sidney K. Zink of Durango, Colorado, to serve as a commissioner from the 8th Transportation District, reappointed. William Tebow Jr. of Pueblo, Colorado, to serve as a commissioner from the 10th Transportation District, reappointed. Members of the Colorado Aeronautical Board for term expiring December 19th, 2018, Charles Amian Myers of Elbert, Colorado, to serve as a member from the Eastern Slope, who represents the local government which operates airports on occasion by the death of Stephen Douglas Dukoff of Colorado Springs, Colorado, appointed for terms expiring December 19, 2020. Robert Phillip Allsloggers of Aurora, Colorado, to serve as representative of the Statewide Association of Airport Managers, reappointed. Ann Beardall of Kiowa, Colorado, to serve as representative of the Statewide Association of Pilots, reappointed. Joe Rice of Littleton, Colorado, to serve as a member familiar with and supportive of the state's aviation issues, interests, and concerns, reappointed. Executive Director of the Department of Transportation, effective December 11, 2017, for a term expiring at the pleasure of the Governor. Michael Peter Lewis of Denver, Colorado, to serve as an Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Transportation, occasioned by the resignation of Shailene Praven Bott of Denver, Colorado, appointed.
Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the following governor's appointments consent calendar. Members of the Mine Land Reclamation Board, members of the Board of Trustees for the Western State Colorado University, members of the Transportation Commission, members of the Colorado Aeronautical Board, Executive Director of the Department of Transportation, and members of the Charter School Institute Board.
Everything except the Charter School Institute Board.
My apologies, Mr. President. Please withdraw the motion on the members of the Charter School Institute Board.
Is there any discussion? The motion is the adoption of all the governor's appointments listed on the consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the appointments are confirmed. Following persons are appointed to the Mine Land Reclamation Board: Lauren Duncan. Following persons are appointed to the Board of Trustees for Western State Colorado University: Richard M. Todd, James G. Oates, Aquino G. Gallegos. To the Transportation Commission: Shannon Margaret Gifford, Luella C. Chavez D'Angelo, Sidney K. Zink, William Thibault Jr. To the Colorado Aeronautical Board: Charles Amian Myers, Robert Phillip Allsloggers, Ann Beardall, Joe Rice, and to the Department of Transportation, Michael Peter Lewis. Consideration of governor's appointments. Mr. Carpenter, please read the appointments to the Charter School Institute Board.
Members of the Charter School Institute Board for terms expiring July 1st, 2020, Elizabeth Dina Abar Conti of Denver, Colorado, Democrat who's experienced public school teacher and as a public school administrator working with charter schools, reappointed Christine Annette Pollard, Grand Junction, Colorado, serves as a member with board or public service experience as a Republican appointed. Eric Cedric Lerum of Denver, Colorado, serves as a member with board or public service experience as a Democrat appointed.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the appointment of Liz Conti, Christine Pollard, and Eric Lerum to the Charter School Institute Board, and ask for just a brief minute to explain why it's not on consent calendar, please.
Please proceed.
Thanks, Mr. President. Colleagues, I don't see this other senator from Colorado Springs in here, but often we have these appointments on consent. I respect the senator from District 11, his not opposition to the individuals that we appointed, but opposition to the philosophy of the Charter School Institute Board in his mind, and undermines local control of schools, and I understand and respect that, or appreciate his principled position on that. I have often taken a no vote similarly in other committees, but despite that, colleagues, I ask for your support of 3 great members. If we are going to have this board as part of our process here in Colorado, ask for your support for 3 great members really across the political spectrum, bring a good bit of accountability and responsibility to the board.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Gardner.
Thank you. Members, colleagues, we heard from these nominees, appointees in education, and, you know, I inquired of each of them about their commitment to charter schools in Colorado, and each of them in various ways and in nuanced ways that perhaps if you're not familiar with the charter school movement, you might not pick up on. But each of them, from their background, from their experience, are committed to parental choice, student choice, and public charter schools in Colorado. And for that reason, while I usually don't come down to comment on these appointments, I wanted to come down and urge an aye vote on these appointments. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we're talking about this, there's a William Tebow on here from Pueblo, Colorado, and he served in the state Senate, and I wonder if that disqualifies him from being able to do rational thought.
Actually, there is no person by that name going for the Charter School Institute Board at the moment. We already approved Mr. Tebow in the previous motion. Is there any further discussion or rational thought? The motion is the appointment of members to the Charter School Institute Board. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the appointments are confirmed. The following persons are appointed to the Charter School Institute Board: Elizabeth Dina Ibar Conti, Christine Annette Pollard, Eric Cedric Lerum. Committee reports.
March 27, 2018, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration of Mayor's Committee articles following: House Bill 1293, refer to committee to hold a favorable recommendation. March 27, 2018, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration of Mayor's Committee articles following: House Bill 1008, refer to committee to hold a favorable recommendation. March 27, 2018, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration of the Mayor's Committee articles following: House Bill 1017, refer to committee to hold a favorable recommendation. March 27, 2018, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration of the Mayor's Committee articles following: House Bill 1029, refer to committee to hold a favorable recommendation. March 27, 2018, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration of the Mayor's Committee articles following: House Bill 1042, be referred to committee to hold a favorable recommendation. Recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. March 27, 2018, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration of the Mayor's Committee articles following: House Bill 1049, be referred to committee to hold a favorable recommendation. Recommendation placed on the consent calendar. March 27, 2018, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration of the Mayor's Committee articles following: House Bill 1198, be referred to committee to hold a favorable recommendation. Recommendation placed on the consent calendar. March 27, 2018, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration of the Mayor's Committee articles following: Senate Bill 207, be referred to committee to hold a favorable recommendation.
Members, we have a former colleague in the chamber with us. Please help us say hello to Senator Ted Harvey.
Okay.
Signing of bills.
Whoops.
The President has signed Senate Bill 299 and 104.
Please excuse Senator Merrifield. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we reconsider immediately the members of the Charter School Institute Board.
Motion before us is for immediate reconsideration of the Charter School Board. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Mr. Carpenter, please read the appointments.
Members of the Charter School Institute Board for terms expiring July 1st, 2020, Elizabeth Dinah Ibar-Conti of Denver, Colorado, Democrat who has experience as a public school teacher and as a public school administrator working with charter schools reappointed. Christina Annette Pollard of Grand Junction, Colorado, serves as a member of the Board of Public Service Experience and as a Republican appointed. Eric Cedric Lerum of Denver, Colorado, to serve as a member of the Board or Public Service Experience and as a Democrat appointed.
Senator Hill.
Thanks, Mr. President. I move for the appointment of Liz Conti, Christine Pollard, and Eric Lerum to the CSI Board.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the appointment to the Charter School Institute Board. All those in favor, or are there no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, the Charter School Institute Board appointments are confirmed. Elizabeth Dinah Ibar-Conti from Denver, Christine Annette Pollard from Grand Junction, and Eric Cedric Lerum from Denver. Announcements. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, just to let you know, this obviously we have this Friday off for Good Friday, and normally our morning invocation is given by Rabbi Yoshi Sarabiansky, and he will not be here, obviously, since we will not be here. And he usually brings us the boxes of matzah, and he will apparently be bringing those by today instead, and so we should be able to have those for distribution tomorrow, I believe, here on the floor. So we will not go without our matzah over Passover weekend. In that same vein, there is a resolution that we began to have drafted, and according to the rules, and going to tributes now more often than not, Representative Michelson Janae and I had a tribute drawn up, but we also have a joint resolution draft at the request of the rabbi. And I would like to make note that the tribute is in regard to the designation of today, March 27th, 2018, as Colorado Education and Sharing Day. And it's a relatively short resolution, and I will like to read the text to you. Whereas excellence in education is vital to the success of our state and nation, and whereas by preparing our students for responsibilities and opportunities to be found in the future, education encourages the adoption of ideals and ethics that equip and unite us in working toward a brighter future. And whereas education blends the nurturing of the heart and mind and the building of character by imparting lessons on honesty, tolerance, and citizenship, in addition to developing intellect through instruction in such subjects as language, math, and science. And whereas the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem M. Schneerson, dedicated his life to the promotion of education as the cornerstone of humanity, and whereas Rabbi Schneerson was a tireless advocate for youth around the world and emphasized the importance of education and good character through the establishment of over 5,000 educational and social institutions in all 50 states and in 80 countries on 6 continents. And whereas over the past 4 decades, the U.S. Congress has set aside Education and Sharing Day, and the day has been proclaimed annually by presidents of the United States in honor of the Rebbe's commitment to teaching the next generation of Americans the values that make our nation strong. And whereas Education and Sharing Day provides Americans an opportunity to pause and recognize our responsibility to ensure that young people have the educational foundation necessary to lead lives rich in purpose and fulfillment. And whereas Chabad Lubavitch is today the largest Jewish outreach and educational provider in Colorado, with multiple independent centers in Aspen, Aurora, Boulder, Colorado Springs, Denver, Fort Collins, Lone Tree, Longmont, Vail, and Westminster. And whereas the character of our young people is strengthened when they serve a cause greater than themselves, and when their lives are anchored by virtues, including courage and compassion, now therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 71st General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that the Colorado General Assembly designates March 27, 2018 as Colorado Education and Sharing Day. And the tribute that is written in summary of that resolution draft is essentially the same, just a summary of those thoughts in the draft resolution on request of President Kevin J. Grantham and Representative Daphne Michelson Janae, given this 27th day of March 2018. So if you get to see the rabbi when he comes in later today or tomorrow, please offer your congratulations and thanks for making us aware of this in particular. And thank you all for your attention, colleagues. Thank you.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. On your desk today, you'll see the this is for some, it's exercise. This is brought today by the physical therapist in which Senator Aguilar and myself and Representative Singer met this morning. Remarkable group. But I just wanted to pass this on to you. It is something you should use on a daily basis, and I'm waiting for somebody to show me how to use it. But anyway, that's who it's from. Thank you.
Senator Martinez-Humenick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I just want to make an announcement that local government will not be meeting today. Senate Bill 190 has been laid over to April 10th.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we're designating days, tomorrow will be Senator from Montrose Day in the Ag Committee. We just today scheduled 3 bills for Ag Committee tomorrow, just so you know that we will hear House Bill 1069, House Bill 1147, and Senate Bill 218. Someone needs to cut off his late bills, with no disrespect, Mr. President.
All in favor say aye. Senators Todd Enfields. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, I would like to ask for a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. My colleague and I from Aurora have a letter that we would like to share with you from our mayor, Steve Hogan. And I'm going to read the first part, and then Senator Fields will read the last part. Dear friends, as many of you have heard, I've been dealing with some health-related issues over the last month. What my family and I initially assumed was the flu has turned to a more serious diagnosis, and I have cancer. I am working closely with healthcare professionals to evaluate all treatment options, which I anticipate beginning in the next week. While my primary focus will be my health, I certainly will continue to serve Aurora along with my fellow elected officials, city management, and employees. Aurora is a strong and diverse city with professional leaders dedicated to serving our citizens. Please know that I have full faith and utmost respect for my city council, city management, employees, and all our community partners. It continues to be my professional privilege to serve as mayor in Aurora. I'm honored to help lead Aurora forward.
Mr. President, may I continue?
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. President. In fairness, one last question must be answered to the benefit of Aurora citizens and residents. I am eligible to seek re-election in 2019. I will not do so. For the great city of for the great city of Aurora, it's time for new leadership. I am thankful for the 34 years of representing Aurora. I would like to thank everyone for their unwavering support and friendship in this difficult time. I must admit, I have taken the liberty of drawing on the collective strength of my family, friends, and our great city, and am ready to begin my journey to recovery. I humbly accept your prayers and accept appreciation and your well wishes. But I would ask that you take any concerns or any angst and turn it into service. Go do something great for Aurora. So in closing, colleagues, I just want you to keep Steve Hogan and his wife Becky up in prayer. And I'm asking that you pray for healing, peace, comfort, encouragement, because I know he can fight this, and I know that he will come back stronger.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senators. Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have a moment of personal privilege, please?
Granted.
Thank you. Colleagues, this is a letter from the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice here in Colorado. To members of the Colorado Senate, as leaders in the faith community of Colorado, we come together to respond with a call for justice and empathy for those who experience sexual harassment in the workplace. In particular, we believe that our public spaces and public officials should lead by example and offer the highest level of justice and accountability. Our faith calls us to speak for those who are marginalized and whose welfare has been ignored. We hope for continuing dialogue on best practices and policies that provide working places where all people are respected regardless of faith, gender, ethnicity, ability, race, or sexual orientation. All people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect in all their interactions, especially while at the workplace. The independent third party hired by the Senate has found varying levels of violation of the dignity and respect of several individuals. Our teachings require us to seek accountability. Therefore, we ask that the leadership of the Senate take action to acknowledge the harm caused to the victims, and in the most egregious cases, we believe expulsion is warranted because a pattern has been found that shows disregard for women. We acknowledge that women in the workplace have often experienced conditions that do not support them fully as human beings and instead have treated them as sexual objects who exist for others' gratification. Because of this long history of inappropriate behavior and the need to change this direction, we believe the Colorado General Assembly must take swift and decisive action to discipline its own members. We support Colorado Senate members seeking bipartisan action to set political division aside and discuss credible allegations of sexual misconduct in the workplace. Republicans and Democrats should stand together to reject inappropriate behavior. Every person who has ever been on the receiving end of inappropriate behaviors is watching closely the actions of our elected leaders. For this reason, we, the members of the Senate Democratic Caucus, ask that Senate resolution we prepared and submitted for introduction on February 13, 2018, entitled Concerning the Expulsion of the Senator from Northwestern Colorado for Sexual Harassment of a Legislative Employee, be promptly introduced and brought to the floor of the Senate for debate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there any further announcements? Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adjourn until 9 a.m. Wednesday, March 28th.
The motion is for the Senate to adjourn until 9 a.m. Wednesday, March 28th. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand in adjournment.